details. This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and Oregon Live, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale.
And I'm Vickie Connor. Together, we take you to some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. And today, we're taking a visit to beautiful Crater Lake, but only for a single night.
Vickie, I don't know how this keeps happening, but I can only ever seem to stay at Crater Lake for one night. My first trip to the park back in 2018 was part of like a quick jaunt through Central Oregon. And my second trip there this summer, I just like didn't have time to stay longer. And I always want to stay longer. It's like such a beautiful place, but just like circumstances only ever seem to allow me to spend one night there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about it because it is, pretty out there to get to Crater Lake. So I think most people, when they go, they would want to stay more than one night.
Like when I drive to Joseph, which is like about the same amount of time it takes to get to Crater Lake, I'm driving, 4 or 5 hours to get here. I'm going to spend like 2 or 3 nights. But Crater Lake is somehow, I don't know, it's been somehow elusive in that way. So I've become sort of used to making the most of a visit to Crater Lake. And that's what happened to this most recent trip that I wanted to talk about today was like, how do you make the most out of your one night in a place like this?
For sure. So Jamie, going into this trip, what were you looking to do exactly in Crater Lake?
Well, part of it is that I was there to talk to the new concessionaire that is running Crater Lake. So, I mean, as some listeners may know, the concessionaire Aramark, who was in charge of a lot of the operations at Crater Lake, was recently removed by the National Park Service earlier this year. And a new concessionaire, Explorus, came in, and I was there to talk about them. We're not going to get into that today. That's not really the point. But I was like, well, I'm here to talk to them. Like, let me also, like, what else can I do while I'm here? And obviously there's a ton to do at Crater Lake. There's like so many places to hike, and there's so many good viewpoints of the lake, and like, there's boating, and, there's places to eat and places to sleep and all this stuff. But I was there in the sort of the middle of June. And at that time of year, it's still pretty snowed in.
Right.
If you're there in July, August, September, you can usually reliably see most stuff or get to or access a lot of things. But when you're there in that shoulder season, like I was, there's only so much you can do. That's kind of what I learned. I think I had bigger goals than I was able to accomplish.
All right. Well, let's kind of start even before the beginning. It's a long drive to Crater Lake. Did you stop anywhere along the way? What did that look like for you?
I always have ideas like I'm going to stop somewhere on the way to Crater Lake, but I think especially when I'm doing it one night, I'm like laser focused on getting there, and I don't want to like dilly dally. Like I'd rather spend an extra hour at Crater Lake than like at a weird little state park on the way. So I may have stopped for gas at some point early on the trip just because I didn't start the full tank, and otherwise I was just there straight to the park. It's pretty far. I want to say it's about 4.5 hours from my house. Sounds about right. And just, tried to get up as early as was reasonable. Which I think for me, I think I left the house at like, 7:30 or 8, to try to get down there by like around the lunch hour.
Yeah. All right. Hope you had a podcast or something.
Yeah, I actually listened to the Happily Never After podcast that the Oregonian recently did, which was great. Highly recommend it. Very different from our podcast, obviously, but if you're into true crime at all, which I'm not usually, it's very fun, very engaging.
Yeah, that one's on my list for sure. Okay, so you get to Crater Lake. It's about lunch hour.
Mhm.
What's first on the agenda?
I feel like the first thing I do when I get to Crater Lake is I go straight to Rim Village and I get out of the car and I look at the lake. That's like I just it's like going to the beach. The first thing I have to do is like stop at the beach, walk out and look at the ocean. Then I can like do other stuff. So like I got to Rim Village and I parked over by the lodge and I just like walked straight out to a viewpoint over the rim. And God, it's so beautiful. That's the thing. That view, like it's one of those views that never gets old. The color of the lake on a sunny day, like my God, it's just like so blue. And I don't it's that shade of blue that like you it doesn't like comprehend. It feels like it's another planet how blue it is. I've never seen a water that color before, and I still haven't seen water that color anywhere. Um, so I just I was enamored with the view as always, and took a good long look, and then my stomach started to growl, and I was like, all right, I gotta eat something before I go any further. So I popped into the lodge because I knew that they were under new management, and I was curious how lunch service was going to be. I popped in for lunch and had a bison burger, which is pretty good. They had all kinds of options. As longtime listeners know, I typically eat vegetarian, but on the road for work, if I see something like that I really want to try, then I go for it. So it was honestly quite good. Had a side salad and a burger, and it was like a great, nice, filling meal after such a long drive.
Yeah, last time I was at Crater Lake, the options I felt were very limited, under, different management there. I feel like it was literally just hamburgers and hot dogs, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, the restaurant has a reputation of being kind of hit or miss. I felt this is the I think probably maybe the best meal I've had at that lodge. I've had a few meals there. It was pretty good. I felt satisfied. The service was good. And all that. So I felt pretty happy about it. But afterward, I was, I had my long interview with the people there after I did that. And by the time I finished all that, it was like, about 4 o'clock, 4:30. And I was like, I want to stick around. I have to check in to where I'm staying the night. And I don't know if you've experienced this, Vickie, but like it can be really tricky finding a place to stay at Crater Lake because the park itself, you have Crater Lake Lodge, which books up, and you have the Mazama Campground, which books up. So unless you're getting a reservation to one of those two places, you're looking outside the park. And it's a pretty remote area. So you're looking at driving 30, 40 minutes to an hour to get to where you're going to stay. That's what ended up happening for me. I got a place at the Union Creek Lodge, which is, it's like, I want to say 40 minutes outside the park. This is a little lodge that's run by Aramark, who used to run things at Crater Lake. And it's just in this little tiny place called Union Creek. Doesn't have any cell service, at least not for me. There's like just the lodge and an ice cream place and a restaurant, and that's it. Pretty rustic, kind of simple room, old fashioned. The screen on the window and a fan. It was pretty hot when I was there. A very, very simple lodging, I would say, but it did the trick. It was a place to stay. So I drove out there to check in. And I found myself in this kind of interesting area. Like, this is again, a place where I have like no cell service, but I could get a little bit like a decent Wi-Fi from the lodge. It wasn't great, but I got some decent Wi-Fi. And at that point I was like, I need gas. I've been driving all day. I have to fill up my car. So where's the nearest gas station around here? I have no idea. But with that little bit of Wi-Fi, I was able to see that there's a gas station just like, 15 minutes south in this town called Prospect. Town is maybe generous. It's a small community called Prospect, which is just a little bit farther south from Union Creek. And there's like one little old fashioned gas station in town. It's got like, I think 2 pumps. The guy's out there, who serves you. He was super nice. It was great. Very, very pleasant experience. But while I was down there, I was also looking at the map and I was like, there's actually some like other stuff around here that I didn't really ever look at. I didn't never see. There's a thing called Avenue of the Boulders, which is just like a couple minutes from the gas station, if that. It's just down the street. And then I saw this place called like Mill Creek Falls recreation area. And I was like, well, I'm right here. When am I ever going to be right here again? Like, I don't know. Let's go check it out.
Avenue of the Boulders. So is that a place that people boulder, climb?
No, not that I know of. It's just so you can see it as I was driving towards the waterfall area. I crossed. It's the Rogue River right there. It's kind of the very upper part of the Rogue River, and there's this really actually beautiful vehicular bridge that goes over the river there. And as you're driving over the river, you can see this really great view looking over the river and at I want to say it was Mount Jefferson. You could see from there. And there's just in that like, riverbed, it's full of these giant boulders.
Wow.
You're right. And so it's just this avenue of boulders, and it's really cool and pretty. And there's a little trail that you can go to take a look at this. The trail kind of keeps going into the woods. And you can hike from there to this Mill Creek Falls area, but I just chose to drive because there's a really nice, easy trailhead there. At this point, I was like not looking to do a ton of hiking. I was like, I just want to go see this cool stuff and go back. So I crossed that bridge, took a look at down there at the Avenue of the Boulders, and then parked at this little trailhead for Mill Creek Falls area. And I found there's a pretty short hike, maybe just like, I don't know, like a mile out and back.
Mm-hmm.
But I hiked sort of through this like confusing trail network. I was really glad I had downloaded a map from Oregon Hikers Field Guide. So I had like some bearings of where to go. But you can hike down from there to these two really great waterfalls. You see these viewpoints. Each one has a viewpoint kind of looking out across the canyon at it. But both Mill Creek Falls and this other one here called Bar Creek Falls are like these towering, wispy, like tall, thin waterfalls that come off of the cliffs down into the river there, and just stunningly beautiful.
I feel like one of the main things that we've talked about with Crater Lake is that a lot of Oregonians don't ever get down there because it is so far away and there's not a ton of stuff to do around that. So, Jamie, are you saying that like Prospect is the place to be? Like, it's an attraction outside of Crater Lake?
Definitely. I mean, the thing is that it's the place to get gas on that side of Crater Lake. So, I mean, if you're at all like, west of Crater Lake and you're looking to get gas, you get it in Prospect. That's what you have to do. As I was driving back to my hotel after this, I saw some people pulled over on the side of the road who flagged me down and said like, hey, we're like almost out of gas. Do you know where you can get some? And I was like, in fact, I do. You're going to be fine. It's just down the road. But like that happens to people because it is pretty remote. So, but if you're in Prospect getting gas, and you have like an extra hour, just drive a few minutes down the road and check out these waterfalls. Like you don't even need an hour. You could do that in like, half an hour.
Right.
It was really worth it. It was very, very cool. I got like, almost like Hawaii vibes with sort of like the lush greenery and these like tall waterfalls pouring off the cliffs. I mean, not quite Hawaii, let's be real, but you know what I mean? Like there were some like madrone trees that were growing alongside these rocky viewpoints, and it was very cool. I was very happy I decided to pull off and do a little side trip.
Very cool. Yeah, I think the last time I was at Crater Lake, we stayed on the other side of the lake towards the east, and also like 45-minute drive from our Airbnb to Crater Lake. But yeah, when I was initially doing my research, I think I was looking at areas around Prospect, and like there seemed to be a pie place that I wanted to go to, that I was like making mental notes of like, next time I visit Crater Lake, I will definitely go there. And apparently also get gas over there as well.
That's the thing. I wonder if this pie place was the restaurant by the lodge. It's called Beckie's.
Did you go to Beckie's?
I had to go to Beckie's.
How was it?
So it was literally across the street from where I was staying, and on the way back from the gas. So I was like, I've got to get dinner at this point. So I stopped at Beckie's. It's the only restaurant. The ice cream place had closed already at that point, unfortunately. I stopped at Beckie's. It's a very simple, no nonsense cafe. Again, this is run by Aramark. So they've got like, it's got that kind of vibe to it. But I thought the menu was a little limited for what I wanted. I ended up with another burger. I got a Beyond Burger there, just to like, I don't know, try something different. I was a little like disappointed to eat another burger, but I just wasn't like, nothing else looked good. And I just wanted to eat something. They had some pie there. They had two kinds of pie at Beckie's, and I don't remember what they were. I wasn't in the mood. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood for a pie. That, I'm sorry to say, I feel like I'm regretting it now that I'm talking to you and you're like, oh, this pie place. But in the moment, if I'm being honest, I was just like, I didn't feel like it.
Yeah. Especially if it's really hot out. I could see that, not wanting another hot item to eat. But I personally am always in the mood for pie.
Oh my God.
So you had dinner at Becky's. At this point, you're still 40 minutes outside of the park. Did you decide to go back to Crater Lake?
Yeah, I mean, I had thought about like, do I want to get some photos of sunset? Because I when I was out at Crater Lake, it was like partly cloudy, which is great for sunsets. And I have not had I've had a good sunrise picture at Crater Lake, but I wasn't able to get good sunset pictures last time I was there. So I was like, well, is it worth the extra like, hour and 20 minutes of driving after doing so much driving today?
Yeah.
But I was like, the alternative is I'm going to sit in this lodge room with like bad Wi-Fi and no cell service and like it's hot. Like I'll just do it. So right after dinner, I just drove straight back to the park, went right up to Rim Village again. And, I had like probably like an hour before sunset. I like to like get, sunset spots a little early if I'm doing a shoot, because I want to like scope out the different angles so that when the colors are happening, I know exactly where to go. So I spent the next hour just sort of walking up and down the trail that's there at Rim Village. It's like a paved trail that runs along all these viewpoints, and sat for a while and looked and just sort of studied the light and looked for different places and found like 2 or 3 vantage points that I was really excited to shoot from, and just like chilled for a while. I should say the mosquitoes were out, so I chilled as much as I could in one place and then like had to keep moving. So I ended up doing a lot of like sitting and pacing and moving around for like that most of that hour.
Right.
But eventually then the sun went down. I got some really good colors in the clouds, some like reds and oranges and golds, and got some great pictures. And then, once the sun was down, I called it a night and drove in the dark back to the Union Creek Lodge.
Wow. So you mentioned this was during shoulder season. Was it crowded at all, or were there other people there?
There were definitely people there. When I was there in the day, when I first got there, the parking lot at Rim Village was a zoo, absolute zoo.
Oh.
And I mean, how just the cars doing crazy stuff, people walking all over the place. It wasn't so bad that I couldn't find somewhere to park. There was definitely, available parking, but a lot of folks there, a lot of international tourists, heard a lot of different languages being spoken. Inside of like the shops, it was packed everywhere. I stopped by the visitor center and it was so crowded. I just turned around and walked right back out. So it definitely was crowded. I mean, Crater Lake starts to get crowded in June. That's kind of like the beginning of its big season.
Right.
So despite there not being a lot available, so like at that time, the entirety of Rim Drive was not open. It was mostly closed for the season still. They had a lot of snow removal to do. So you just had kind of like that one little section you could go to from like the south entrance up to Rim Village. And that's about it.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of room for people to spread out. So what crowds were there were kind of condensed into this one little area.
I see. All right. Well, that was your kind of day one. You hopefully got some good sleep, not sweating too much overnight.
Had the fan on, the window open. It was fine.
Okay, good. What did the next morning look like for you?
Well, I had to like be back home at by like the evening. So I didn't have very much of the day. So I was like, I'm gonna wake up early. I'm gonna drive back to the park and I'm going to try to do a bunch of hikes as much as I can. I had this like list of like short, easy hikes. And I started from like, the lower elevation and worked my way up. That was the idea. Because I figured the lower elevation ones are going to be most likely to be open right now. I mean, there are some that I had planned on that when I saw the Rim Drive was closed, I just couldn't do. But there were 3 or 4 that seemed like they were going to be doable. So I started down, if just inside the south entrance before you even get to like the pay booth. There's the Annie Creek Cafe, and the Mazama Campground is right there. Okay. So I stopped off there, had breakfast at the Annie Creek Cafe, just had a regular breakfast sandwich with like hash browns. It was totally fine and normal. Had a bad cup of coffee. Sorry to say, Annie Creek, bad coffee. That's just the way it is. I didn't have expectations. Portland coffee snob, I get it. It was coffee. But right behind, like from the parking lot there, you can walk to the campground. And then right behind the campground is this hike into the Annie Creek Canyon. And I loved this hike. It was so beautiful and cute and nice and fun. It's a pretty short and easy hike. It's about 2.3 miles in all. I would call it moderately easy. There's like, you have to hike down into the canyon and then back up. So there's like one steep hill you have to climb. Okay. And the rest of it is like flat. But you hike above, like sort of the back end of the campground. The trail runs along the rim of this canyon. And there's some great views across the way, some interesting like rock formations and just some really pretty views. And you dive down into the canyon where it's a bit darker and mossier, but like so lush and green. There were like these vibrant green meadows where like this Annie Creek was trickling through. The water was so clear. There's still a little bit of snow to navigate, but it wasn't so much that it was not doable. So like this sort of seemed to be like, the start of the season for Annie Creek Canyon. But I love this hike. This is like one of those ones that people are not necessarily going to think to do at Crater Lake because it doesn't have a view of the lake. Like, why would you do that? Or if you're staying at the campground, it's a perfect place to go because you can just go from your campsite, like literally walk from wherever you're camping to this trail. But if you're not, you might not think to do it. So I was really happy I did though, because it was just so charming. It was a great way to spend the morning. Like the morning light was coming in and the colors were all bright and it was so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think definitely most people when they're going to Crater Lake, they would expect to do a hike and have some type of view. But really, are there that many hikes with like a view of Crater Lake? For some reason in my head, last time I like was looking, there were more going away from the lake than like going to it.
There's definitely several. There's several peaks and viewpoints that you have to like hike to, for sure. But a lot of all those hikes are like up on Rim Drive. So when it's closed, you just can't get to them. Or those hikes go up in elevation, it's going to be covered in snow and you just shouldn't do it. So like there's only so many things you can do. So I think if you're at Crater Lake in that shoulder season, especially that beginning of the season, Annie Creek is a great place to go if you want to do something and get into nature. I did see a few other people out there, but that was it. There's hardly anyone there. So I don't know. This is one of my new go-to recommendations for Crater Lake. It's different, but it's beautiful and it's so worth it.
How long did that one take you about?
I mean, just like maybe an hour and a half, if that. 2.5 miles is not that bad. I stop a lot to take pictures. But it was a pretty quick and easy hike. I was out of there by, it was still morning when I got finished that hike. That was the idea. I wanted to start early enough where I could do a hike and then have time for a few more. So my plan was to leave Annie Creek and then just continue, enter the park, and then just stop off at all the places I could along the way and see if they were accessible. So the next one I came to was this place called Godfrey Glen, which is another really, really small hike. It's 1.1 miles in all, and it's a loop trail you can do. It's super easy. There's like 38 feet of elevation gain. It's flat. And the trail is like compacted gravel. So it's made for like people with mobility devices in mind, and a lot of pullouts. And it has these great views over this canyon that was really cool. Like these sort of like this deep canyon. And it kind of wandered through the woods, kind of meandered. At first I thought like, oh, well, this is just like a little walk through the woods. No big deal. But then I got to these viewpoints and I was like, oh, whoa, this is something else. Very cool. Loved it. Would recommend it, just especially if you're just looking to like stretch your legs. I saw like a guy who had his kid out and he was like, hey, he said, how long is this hike? And I told him, he said, oh, that's great. We just want to get out and walk around. So he and his kid did the hike, the opposite way that I did. And it was very cool. The one thing I will say is that these viewpoints over this canyon, the canyon is for some reason very dusty. So a couple of times I was standing out there looking over, just soaking in the view, and this gust of wind would come up and just blow all of this dust into my eyes and my mouth. And I'd have to back off and go back into the woods. So be aware if you're stopping at Godfrey Glen for that blowing dust.
Pro tip, bring a bandana.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. What was the next one?
Yeah, so the next one, I ended up then at the Steel Visitor Center, which is the one I said was so crowded. I didn't even bother spending any time in there. There's a couple of trails that lead from the visitor center. Again, very short, easy trails. There's one that like kind of starts at the visitor center and then kind of goes up into the hills past all of these like historic cabins, which is very cool. It's called Lady of the Woods. But very quickly when I started doing the hike, I realized that it was going to be too snowy to do.
Oh, no.
It got to the point where I was like, I didn't know where the trail was. And it wasn't like out there. It was pretty close to like, the visitor center. But at some point I just had to like step off and find the access road and just walked the road up to the cabins, took a look. Very cool cabin. Again, very cool, very worth it. Like just walking the access road from the visitor center up to these historic cabins is very cool and interesting, but could not complete the hike and was a little disappointed. But fortunately, right across the street, there's another one called the Castle Crest Trail that is known for like wildflowers, apparently. And I was like, okay, early summer, wildflowers, let's check it out. I crossed the street, immediately hit the snow. Didn't even bother beginning to do that hike because I saw it was just snow all the way into the woods. So couldn't do it. Had to cross that one off the list. And I was like, everything else is accessed by the East Rim Drive, which is closed.
Yeah.
So I was like, I guess that's the end of my hiking, actually. And, at that point it was like, a little earlier than I planned to leave, but, I had already walked all the stuff at Rim Village I could, gotten all those views already. And I said, well, I guess I'll just make good time and go home.
Oh gosh. Kind of a bummer to, have plans, have to kind of pivot with the snow, but dang, early summer. Should have brought your snowshoes, Jamie.
I guess. I mean, that's the thing. Like, first of all, I've never make plans expecting them to go according to plan.
Yeah.
Something always goes wrong. Something always falls through, and that's just the way it goes. So it was okay. But also, I mean, I was like, this is really illustrating the challenges of going to Crater Lake early in the season. And we don't necessarily think of like mid-June as early in the season for many places, but when we're talking about places at elevation, it certainly is. Like, you know, that's a time when a lot of mountain hood hikes are not going to be open. And in Crater Lake, it's easy to forget, like, is a volcano.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it doesn't have its top anymore. But like it's a mountain. And so it gets snow very late into the year. And you know, that's a reality. Even at these lower elevations, you are going to see snow in June or sometimes July. So, you know, I had a perfectly good time. I saw some great views. I love the Annie Creek hike, especially those waterfalls. There's a lot I did in this trip that I really enjoyed, and a lot that I wanted to do but couldn't. So, you know, that's just more fodder to go for, you know, another trip. Hopefully a trip that's not just one night.
For sure. So aside from those hikes that had the snow on them, anything else for next time that you're looking forward to?
I mean, so many hikes that looked interesting to me. This Flakini Falls hike, Castle Crest, I would like to see. You know, Garfield Peak is a bigger hike I'd like to do. Mount Scott is a bigger hike I'd like to do. But I was told already Mount Scott is sort of more of a July to September kind of hike. Right. So I think, you know, if I were to do it and I wanted to do like all this hiking, I would go closer to September, like that post Labor Day when maybe the crowds are a little less, and you're guaranteed to have like no snow up there.
Yeah, for sure.
Once you get into October, the snow starts falling again, and you don't want to get caught up in that, and it gets super cold. But September, I feel like, is the prime time to visit Crater Lake.
Speaking of early September, I might actually be going that first Saturday after Labor Day, because Ride the Rim is happening on both September 7th and the 14th. And if you've listened to the past podcast where I rode the rim around Crater Lake in like a random October that had nice weather, that was outside of this event. So I'm looking to actually like participate in the event itself where they close down Rim Drive. So fingers crossed, the weather will be very lovely at that point, but something to be aware of if you're looking to avoid crowds, the 7th and the 14th, probably not the best for that.
Oh, but that's going to be so cool though, Vickie.
I'm hoping it can work out with my timeline and things that I want to do like towards the end of summer. And this time I'm jumping in that lake. That is what I am doing.
Man, Vickie, that I think that's a must for you. You've got to get in there. You've got to, you know, experience those blue waters firsthand, up close. Man, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to hear about all that goes on in your trip there.
Me as well. But I will say, Jamie, is there only one trail where you can actually like access the lake to the water?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The Cleetwood Cove Trail, which they have done some work on. I'm not seeing any closures on it right now. But that is something that has, you know, been open and closed sort of throughout the last couple of years. But Cleetwood Cove is a trail. It's great. It's beautiful. It's a hike down to the water. That's where you get boats if you want to do a boat tour. Boat tours are, I think, about to start running if they haven't already. Hard to get tickets to them, but if you can get a boat tour, that's cool too. But yeah, Cleetwood Cove is your place if you want to go down to the water.
Great. A nice cold plunge after the bike ride sounds so lovely to me.
I bet that's a cold plunge too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sure to report back though on how that goes.
Please do. Well, folks, I think that will do it for us for today. Until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonians YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as HereIsOregon.com.
Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoy the show. And if you want to support this podcast, as well as our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find details at OregonLive.com/pod support. Also, if you're a fan of the show and you're interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@oregonian.com. This episode of the show was produced by me, Vickie Connor, alongside Jamie Hale.
Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.